NFL Week 5 game breakdowns. The first quarter of the NFL season is complete. 3 more quarters to go. Hopefully you guys are finding value within these game previews. I've been doing okay betting the NFL overall, but the only record that really matters, or the one that I care about, is the one I post publicly inside the Discord community. And after 4 weeks, there's no way to sugarcoat it. It's just been terrible. A lot of bets I regret. You never want to be in the negative in any sport, but NFL is definitely not the sport you want to go too deep into the negative because of the volume of bets is so small compared to other sports. In the NBA or baseball, you can easily make 400 or 500 bets in a season. With NFL, it might only end up being 100 or 150 bets. So I do have some work to do. Not really worried about it or not ready to hit the panic button or anything. The bright side is we do have a lot of the season left. And I've been here before. In fact, in 2022, I started the season down, I think, 5 or maybe 6 units and ended up finishing with one of my best NFL seasons since starting the Discord 5 years ago. Now, at first glance of these Week 5 games, it looks like a tough week. A lot of pick-the-winner games with short spreads. But when I ran my numbers, I was surprised. I showed a lot of games with a big edge. I create my own point spreads for each game using several different advanced metrics, and I post these in what I call the Power Packet. It's a downloadable Google Doc that Discord members can copy and make adjustments to where they see fit. It has my power ratings, a bunch of other helpful stuff too, like team tendencies, red zone tendencies, which are really helpful for like anytime touchdown props. There's EPA ratings and some other stuff in there as well. Now, once again, Week 5, there continues to be a lot of market manipulation with early week setups, dummying up of lines, and then coming back the opposite way later in the week. Also, a ton of conflicting opinions among sharp betting groups, more so than I can ever remember in years past. Every week, there's several games where there's respected pro betting groups on opposite sides, and they just go back and forth on the key numbers. I'll try and run through each game as quickly as I can, but also want to make sure I discuss the key points in each game. We'll have a few less games this week because bye weeks are here. Lions, Chargers, Eagles, and Titans all have the week off. Ton of trends when it comes to bye week teams, pre-bye, post-bye, coming off a loss pre-bye and post-bye, or wins going into a bye and out of a bye. So we'll discuss those situations as they come up. Now let's get into the Week 5 games. Starting with the Jets, Vikings, we head across the pond to London at Hotspur Stadium. We have a pretty big adjustment here from where this line was on the look ahead. The Jets were actually minus 2.5, but after the Jets looked terrible versus the Broncos, this line flipped to Vikings minus 2.5. I think that look ahead line of Jets minus 2.5 was a bad line, even before the Jets lost to Denver. And I was looking to bet Minnesota as soon as possible, but missed getting the good number. But I did settle for Minnesota minus 140 on the money line. Big reason for this line adjustment has to do with Rodgers post-game talking about the swelling in his knee and how he's been limping around the facility. Weather reports for this game as of now saying 50 or 60% chance of rain. Should be some double-digit winds as well, up to 15 miles per hour. This could be a factor here because it is an open roof dome stadium, and the field surface in past games has been an issue, and if you add rain to it, it could end up being a storyline in this game, and it's a reason we're seeing under money come in. There's always bettors that just look to get ahead of any type of weather-related games and bet the under. Now, weather was bad in Denver last week. Rodgers missed some throws. He blamed it on the weather, and it looks like there's going to be weather in this game as well. Curious to see how Rodgers looks when you factor in the field conditions, especially against this Vikings defense, which is just a better version of the Broncos defense that the Jets played last week. Broncos, through 4 games this season, have they're number one in blitz rate. This put a ton of pressure on the Jets offensive line, who have now had a couple games where the Jets O-line has just been beat up badly. Jets had 13 penalties, 5 of them were offsides. And there's a lot of talk about Aaron Rodgers and his hard count and cadence, which he's known for. We've seen him get defenses to jump off sides, and it turns into a free play that he takes advantage of his whole career. The problem is now his offensive linemen are the ones jumping off sides. And another thing you can notice watching the Jets games, and I've talked about this before, is how slow the Jets offense operates snap to snap. Rodgers is snapping the ball with less than 5 seconds on the clock, and the problem with this is defenses can time up the snap or at least narrow it down to a 5 second window, and they're getting solid jumps off the line. And when you have a team like Denver that blitzes so often and they can time their blitzes, it's a huge advantage. I say all this because the Vikings, they're number 2 in blitz rate. Brian Flores, Vikings defensive coordinator, is typically number 1 in blitz rate every year. And I'm not trying to compare Denver's defense to the Vikings because nobody can really replicate a Brian Flores defense. It's very complex, confusing. They do a great job at disguising where the blitz will come from, but can't help but notice how the Jets struggled so much versus Denver. The Broncos blitzed Rodgers 43% of the time. Rodgers finished with a negative 0.3 EPA per play and only 5 yards per pass attempt. Rodgers took 14 hits and was sacked 5 times, and now he gets to play a better version of the defense that just killed him. Factor in Rodgers is likely to be less than 100% with his knee and could be less mobile. You can look at this 2 ways. Broncos blitz gave the Jets a ton of problems, so the Vikings blitz should do the same. Or because the Jets just saw a similar style defense last week, this week they'll be better prepared to face it. It's also worth noting Rodgers is probably the best QB at diagnosing where the blitz is coming from pre-snap. Flores blitzes get home because of how good he disguises where the blitzes come from. Rodgers is really good at figuring out where they're coming from. Now, one way to slow down an aggressive defense that blitzes a lot is increase the tempo. It keeps them from being able to sub in fresh legs or rotate guys, but I'm not sure Rodgers can comfortably go up tempo. We haven't seen him do it at all, but interested to see if this is a change they make. Which, if any of you guys watching this video watch games live on Sunday, I'm assuming most of you do, there's really good opportunities for live betting. If you see a team like the Jets, who are normally a very slow-paced team, go up-tempo and switch up and start playing faster, there's going to be blind value on betting the over live in-game because the total is going to be set based on the Jets' previous pace of play. And not just with the Jets either. Any team that switches tempo, either if they, are a team that, plays fast, they start to go slow. You can take advantage of this. Something you can only take advantage of while watching the games live. Something else that makes me really like the Vikings is that this will be the 3rd game for the Vikings versus a very similar style team. They played San Fran and then they played Houston, which is a coaching tree that started under Shanahan in San Fran and have a lot of similarities. Now the Jets, Robert Saleh, who comes from underneath that Shanahan coaching umbrella. And when you look at how well the Vikings did against both San Fran and Houston, it's hard to imagine any other result versus the Jets, who have a lot of the same similarities. Normally, the Vikings are a team I'd be looking to bet against. Really any team that went from plus 2.5 to now minus 2.5, or a team that through 4 weeks has looked flawless and is semi-overhyped. But I just think this is such a bad matchup for the Jets, and think the Jets might actually be the overrated team in this matchup. Based on my power ratings, I have the Vikings 5 points better than a league average team. I have the Jets 1.4 points better than a league average team. So how you convert this is you just subtract the 1.4 from the 5, which gives you Vikings favorites of, we'll call, 3.5 points. Normally, we would factor in home field advantage, but with this game being played on a neutral field, there is no home field advantage. So we look at what 3.5 points converts to on a money line. It's typically minus 170, minus 175-ish. I opted to bet Minnesota minus 140, so I think I do have some thin value here. But outside my numbers, I just see a lot of on-field negative matchups here for the Jets. Minnesota's offense has been awesome. 52% of all the Vikings offensive snaps this season have been with them winning by double digits. The next closest team is only 37%. It's only been 4 games, but the Vikings have beat 3 teams that are clearly much better than the Jets, with the Niners, Texans, and Packers. I don't think there's anything the Jets can do offensively that Brian Flores won't be prepared for. I think there's a big overall coaching mismatch here with Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell over Robert Saleh and Jets offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett, who basically just does whatever Aaron Rodgers says, but versus Brian Flores. Mismatch there. My only real concern is, as good as Sam Darnold has looked, He's made some real head-scratching mistakes and throws in every game so far, and he's been real fortunate to have played games where he doesn't have to extend plays or create plays out of structure. In fact, 70% of his dropbacks have all been in structured plays, which basically means, the ball gets snapped, he drops back and throws. I'd be interested to see what he looks like if that 70% turned into even 60 or 55%, where he would have to go out of structure and make plays. Also, I don't know if subconsciously this is me hedging my bet on the Vikings or second guessing myself, but I really do think Garrett Wilson has a big day. This isn't a lockdown Viking secondary. The defense is built around pressure on the QB, and it makes the secondary look good because throws are rushed. There's nobody in the Vikings secondary that can cover someone like Garrett Wilson, especially with how often the Vikings blitz. Wilson's going to see a lot of one-on-one coverage. Of course, it's not as easy as Garrett Wilson just beating his man. Rodgers still has to get him the ball. But if Rodgers finds any time, or if the Jets are able to pick up the blitz, I think Wilson will be open a lot. So I'm looking for some of his overs with Garrett Wilson. Let's move on to the next game down the list here. We've got a bunch of games left. Panthers, Bears. I like the Bears, and I bet them -4. Pending possible best bet in the Discord. This line just seems short. The odds makers are basically putting the Panthers in the same weight class as the Rams. Bears closed -3 at home last week versus the Rams, and to put that into perspective, I have the Rams 5.5 points better than the Panthers if they played on a neutral field and if it was unadjusted for injuries. Week 1, the Bears were -4.5 versus the Titans. This was when there was a lot of unknowns about what this Bears team would look like. I've had the Titans rated better than the Panthers all season, but yet we're seeing the same exact line. I think Panthers getting a ton of credit here for their win over the Raiders and Andy Dalton's first start after taking over for Bryce Young. Panthers dealing with a ton of injuries and have some real key ones on defense. Panthers' run defense wasn't good when they had their nose tackle Shy Tuttle. He looks like he's going to miss. And nose tackles are just so important when it comes to stopping the run, and it's a position that gets ignored, at least when it comes to the betting lines. And, I'd argue nose tackles are worth more to a team than running backs. But when we see a running back get ruled out, we see the line move because of it. Panthers are also without linebacker Shaq Thompson. He's done for the season now. Linebacker Josie Jewell, he's out. That's both inside linebackers from their 3-4 defense out for this game. I can't stress enough just how bad this Panthers defense is, and when you factor in these injuries, it's even worse. They don't get pressure on opposing QBs. They're allowing a ton of points, over 30 points per game. They've allowed 9 touchdown passes in 4 games. They have the worst point differential in the league. The list goes on and on. Now, is the Bears' offense built to fully exploit this Panthers' weakness in defense? Probably not, but with a defense like this, you're never really out of the game, I think. I make the Bears -4.5 in this game, and that's after I've upgraded this Panthers' offense quite a bit since Dalton took over. Since Dalton took over, the Panthers' offense ranked 7th in EPA per play. They're also allowing a league-low pressure rate in his 2 starts, but a big reason for that is how quickly he's getting rid of the ball. It's not like this Panthers offensive line just all of a sudden became elite. But I will say, in the Panthers' credit, their loss by 10 to Cincy was definitely misleading. Panthers didn't convert on a 1st and goal. They allowed a 16-yard touchdown drive after an INT deep in their own end. That game looks a lot closer if just a few things go differently. But for the second straight week in a row, Bears will play the league's worst defense. Rams, depending on what metrics you look at, are the league worst. Panthers are league worst based on several different metrics as well, but I have the Panthers worst in the league this week because of how many injuries the Panthers have on defense. The Bears just seem like a team that it just keeps improving week after week, and those are the teams you can find value on because they aren't yet realized by the betting market as a good team. Everyone can identify a team's current form. There's no talent in telling what a team is currently. Telling what a team is in the future is where you can make money. Caleb Williams seems to be progressing well too. He's not forcing stuff and taking what the defense gives him now. It Helps that they now have their preseason projected offensive roster on the field with Keenan Allen now back. As far as the total goes, I don't have a strong opinion, but I do lean towards the over. Looks like weather is in the forecast for this game, at least as far as wind goes, double-digit winds, which shouldn't be a surprise in the windy city. And no matter what, when there's any weather, the total drops. Total was 43-ish, and once the weather report showed signs of wind, under money came crashing in on the screen. But yeah, give me the Bears -4 in this one. Moving on to the next game, we got a good one, a divisional matchup, Ravens-Bengals. While updating the final edited version of this Week 5 game previews, the file got messed up somehow. The audio is blanked out. It's unbelievably frustrating. I know it may not look like it, but it does take me a lot of time editing these videos. To have a full video recorded and edited go to waste is just gut-wrenching right now. Not only because of time wasted, but because all the info on each game doesn't get shared. I thought of re-recording the video and editing again, but by the time I finished editing, I'd be lucky if it was posted before Sunday. Luckily, I do the primetime games separately, both Sunday and Monday Night Football games, so I will have that video posted shortly. But for the Week 5 games, it's a loss. I apologize. I'll try and share some game notes in the Discord, but more importantly, you got to try to figure out what happened and how the audio didn't sync, and then it was just not even audible, like it was nothing. Make sure that doesn't happen again.